Welcome back to your Tuesday Buckeye Talk from cleveland.com. We are previewing spring football. It's it's on the schedule to start a week from today. The NFL Combine is also happening right now, so we're going to have a lot of coverage on this podcast this week about the NFL Combine, but spring football is around the corner. So this is going to be our version of a spring football preview. Doug Lesmerises, Nathan Baird, Stephen Means, we're going to draft the 9 most intriguing players for Ohio State spring football. And we will discuss those players, and it should give you an idea of what we plan to be watching, what we're most interested in, what matters most for the Buckeyes this spring. And then we'll get back to a lot of combine coverage later this week. And then we're going to have we're supposed to have the first Ohio State spring practice day next Tuesday. And then we start talking to people and hopefully start watching some stuff. So Nathan Baird, off the top, let's remind people, it doesn't mean these guys can't be drafted, but we're not going to learn anything by their presence. Maybe we would learn something by their absence. But there are some guys who we know who are going to be hurt and not taking part in spring football. Who are they?
So this was a list that we were given on February 1st by Ryan Day, and he said was one that could grow. But as of that day, these are the guys they declared out for the spring. And that was Julian Fleming, Emeka Egbuka, Tommy Eichenberg, Trevion Henderson, Mitchell Melton, Court Williams III, and Evan Pryor and Jacob James. So most of those guys, Mitchell Melton, Court Williams, Trevion Henderson, Evan Pryor, we knew those guys had surgeries last year, sometime in the last year, late last year to some extent, or in the preseason, and we're coming back still. And then Fleming, Egbuka, Eichenberg, and James, those were newer things, but some of those guys, especially Eichenberg, we knew were banged up already at the end of the year.
All right, I'm going to go first in this draft, and I'm going to take a guy who I believe we don't have this confirmed yet, but I think he may be also coming off a minor surgery, but I don't think it will affect him for the spring. And I'm going to take Sonny Styles, who is going to have Bryson Shaw destapled from him before practice starts. But then once he gets out there, I expect that Sonny will be able to let it rip. And so the reason I'm taking Sonny Styles is because I want to see where they put him. I want to see how they use him. I want to see if it's possible that he looks like the best player on the defense now that he's settled in. And Stephen Means, we got a tiny, tiny piece of a peek of Sonny Styles last year. He was a freshman last year. He was an early enrolled guy. Last time Ohio State had a guy of this profile who gave up his whole senior year of high school to early enroll, he went back to Kombucha, Texas, before he got a chance to be like a real Buckeye. We got the tiny little peek of Quinn Ewers, and then we never got the real thing. Now we got the tiny little peek of Sonny Styles, and now we're going to get the real thing. This is the beginning, Stephen, of the now, I guess you could ask Brock Bowers. He was out there in the stinking playoff semifinal playing. So we did get that. Whatever 14 snaps or whatever it was that Sonny Styles played against Georgia. This is the beginning of the real Sonny Styles, Stephen, and I can't wait to see what it looks like, how they use him, and what we think its impact is going to be.
Yeah, the last guy got homesick and went home. This guy can't really get homesick because he lives 15 minutes down the street. But it's in it. He unlocks a lot. And the way that Jim Knowles, his face is lit up every time he's been asked about him, the way Barry Eliano has talked highly of him and how he has never really looked like a freshman, which it's not because he isn't supposed to be a freshman. It's because he's so much more mature, and how he's talked about part of the reason why he got here so early is he always played up. So he was used to playing against older people. So this was not going to be a hard transition for him. He just unlocks so much for this defense if he's what we all think he is. So I agree. It's not so much, what does he look like? Is he really as good as we think he is? It's just, where are they using him? Because what's the idea of Sonny Styles in the Jim Knowles system that best maximizes him, but also best maximizes the defense over the next 2 years?
And it does seem like, Nathan, they have options here, right? We think Lathan Ransom can kind of move around on the back end there if they need to. We feel like Sonny Styles can do that. We don't know how exactly Josh Proctor or Kai Stokes or other safeties are going to fit in. This is an intriguing group, but I don't know. Would you have taken Sonny number 1, Nathan, or is this too high?
I had him in my top 9. I wouldn't have taken him number 1, but that's that tells you a lot about what we think about Sonny Styles. First of all, we should say the thing you said at the beginning, if you didn't listen to Friday's pod, that makes
That's your
no
fault.
sense to you.
No.
That was no. I just want to make sure that you're not putting it out there that he actually had surgery
To remove a player who was stapled to him.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Should we
if you didn't listen to Friday's
20
podcast, go back and listen to that. That wasn't that we were talking about a fictional surgery that Doug conjured because he didn't draft as savvily as I did in the moment. But
and I joked that in the draft we were going to make Nathan's team staple Bryson Shaw to Sonny Styles. But to our knowledge, that didn't actually happen in real life. So it's just a stapling.
Correct.
Correct.
No,
but you shouldn't mess around with surgeries. Point taken. You shouldn't mess. Did you guys hear on Buckeye Talk? Some kind of staple surgery.
This is what I'm trying to avoid.
Yeah,
this is what I'm trying to avoid.
There are definitely some
is.
people out. Yeah, there's definitely somebody out there who heard surgery, didn't continue on, and went, "Oh my God, what's wrong with Sonny Styles?" And then you listen to the rest of it, it's like, "Oh, okay."
You know how many tweets went out in the last 90 seconds?
Yeah.
Heard on Buckeye Talk. So, yes, it was all just bringing it back. It was a callback. It was a Buckeye Talk callback.
Yeah, rewarding the loyal listeners.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I didn't have him as high. I had him in my top 9. I did not have him this high, but mostly because, in a weird way, I feel like there's some certainty with Sonny Styles coming into the spring. I feel like he's going to be in this starting lineup. Now, you make good points about where he fits in, decide some other things, but I think we're at a point now, having seen the confidence that they put in him as a true freshman, especially late in the year, and the fact that they do already have some holes to fill in that secondary, and he has clearly been pointed at by important people and said that's the guy who's going to fill them. I'm intrigued by what it's going to look like, but it doesn't answer a huge question. I feel like the question's already been answered. Like, Sonny Styles is going to be on the field. So now it's just a matter of what does it look like?
I'm always intrigued by guys that, is he just going to move different? You know, it's like, Ryan Shazier, he just moved different than other guys. Chase Young just moves different. Malik Hooker, once he got it rolling, just kind of moved different. Like top end Marshawn Lattimore healthy, just kind of move different than guys. And so there's like an eyeball thing of, I want to see like him, if we get some, people listening to this again, you guys know by now, we get a lot of stretching. We get a lot of early drill work. We think we'll probably get eyeballs, right, on the first day of practice. And then maybe we hope at some point in the middle of spring, maybe we'll get a longer look at one practice where you get to see some 11-on-11s, and that's when you can really see some of this stuff, both in terms of the depth chart, but also in terms of, that guy just looks different. We don't know. We don't get to watch every practice. There's 15 practices. The 15th is the spring game. The other 14, we don't get much. But you're always on alert for when we do get it, is there going to be like a, whoa. And I think the guy, like the whoa moment from a guy, just how he goes about it. The newest whoa moments available, Marvin Harrison Jr., if he has a whoa moment in practice, by the way, we're a couple days now removed from this, but Steven and I were at the basketball game on Thursday night. Marv Jr. and Marv Sr. at the basketball game. Marvin Harrison's, two of them at the Ohio State basketball game. Kyle McCord was there too. Right, Steven? Kyle McCord was there. Kyle
McCord and Jaden Ballard, yeah. So the only roommate missing was Emeka Ibuka, who also was the only roommate not participating in spring football. So, yeah.
So, anyway, that's why I took Sonny Styles number 1, because I think there's a chance that when we get eyeballs on him, we're going to say, whoa. Steven, you have the second pick. Where are you going?
Same direction with the woes. Shout out to Justin Fields, always hitting it better than any quarterback in the country. I just want to see
Justin, I saw you do a dance on TikTok. What do you call that fancy dance that you do?
That was the question I asked Justin Fields when he hit the whoa.
My daughters enjoy doing a TikTok dance. It makes me feel cool to ask you about this.
That was me. And Justin Fields was like, could you be older and lamer? But he was very nice about it. But he did hit the whoa, Steven, right?
He did. He hit the whoa. In front of the entire team, hit the whoa. Speaking of, I hope this guy hits the whoa, but in a different way that makes us go whoa. CJ Hicks, I want to see him just do awesome stuff, because we've talked about it enough, this idea of, can he force his way onto the field when your two returning linebackers who played all the meaningful snaps, especially in the second half of the season, are back? Well, Tommy Eichenberg is out. I would expect Steel Chambers to not be going 100% of the time just because he's a returning starter, and that's how they do things in the spring. So there's going to be a lot of snaps for these younger linebackers who haven't had a chance to do much. I just want to see C.J. Hicks look like a 5-star linebacker that is everything that, whether it's James Laurinaitis, who just got here, or Al Washington, how he would talk about him as a recruit, off the record a lot of times, or Jim Knowles would talk about him, the things that you would see play, the way our evaluators talked about. I want to see that stuff this spring. He's going to get every opportunity to do it. I want to see him start doing that stuff. I want to be able to leave this spring and know we can say that guy needs to be on the field. I don't care who's coming back.
Yeah, the spot's there for Sonny. The spot is not as clearly there for CJ, Nathan. And this opportunity, now Eichenberg's the one who's out. He's a middle linebacker. CJ Hicks isn't a middle linebacker. So this really is more of a Steel Chambers, CJ Hicks conversation. But regardless, right, you just open a little bit of stuff up. And to that point, that's exactly it, Stephen, right? Is it just like, well, whatever else is happening, CJ Hicks needs a role here, Nathan. That is a little bit more of a complex conversation than it is with Sonny.
I had Hicks higher on my list than Styles because he's the one that kind of upends the apple cart here. If he shows up and is just the dude, and now what do you do? Now do you have to do you demote a starter to get this guy on the field more? Or do you make it a timeshare like what they were kind of doing last year early on with Chambers and Cody Simon? Or do you find some way that you want him on the field in certain situations? I don't know, but whereas I see that Styles has a spot. I feel like Sonny Styles is a starter on this defense. We assume that right now. We don't assume that of CJ Hicks, but we also weirdly assume that he has the highest talent ceiling of anybody in that linebacker room. And so we weren't necessarily, go back a few years where you had that group, that, what was it, 2018 linebacker class that was blocked by just several guys ahead of them, and it never really worked out. Taraja Mitchell being the last remnant of that, who finally left the program after last year. We never really, I think, assumed that those guys were more talented than the guys ahead of them, necessarily. We just always assumed that when they got their shot, they would take it, and that's what didn't really happen. Here,
people kind of thought, we maybe assumed they were more talented than Tough Borland.
Okay, but
Taraja probably.
But that was more about our perception of Tough than our perception of Taraja.
I think that is definitely the way I would say that, yes.
Yeah.
And by we, you're saying like literally the entire world. Like the collective, everybody who watched, like this is an assumption everybody made. So, but I think the opposite is true here. I think everyone looks at CJ Hicks and they're like, that's a guy, but you have to respect what Chambers and Eichenberg's especially have done these last 2 years. And Eichenberg not being around for the spring doesn't really mean anything because that's your starting Mike linebacker this fall, no matter what. So yeah, I had Hicks higher on my list simply because if it's a no doubt thing that we see this spring, and it's actually probably a thing that would show up more in preseason camp maybe than the spring, that was where the decision would probably be made. But this is an opportunity for him to do what we've seen guys do the past few springs, like a guy that we're going to talk about later on this list, Jordan Hancock, last year, what he did last spring, where it was like, okay, yeah, they've got Cam Brown back, they've got Denzel Burke back, but what if Jordan Hancock's actually maybe the best cornerback here? Like, he's really showing out at times this spring. Like, maybe you start to have that conversation about CJ Hicks.
And that's a good comparison because clearly Jordan Hancock showed that, and they were prepared to react to it, and then he got hurt. But the way they talked about Jordan Hancock, again, as it evolved, the conversation as he continued to be out, by the end, it was like, no, this guy was like, was going to start. Like, he finally got him. So they were open to that, and that was with guys coming back. So that was okay. A fully healthy Jordan Hancock, I don't think it's much dispute, right? Would have been a starting corner for them last year, I guess, over Cam Brown. So I don't think it's a completely dissimilar conversation of what Steel Chambers would be in this conversation to what Cam Brown would have been in that previous conversation. Doesn't mean they aren't good players. But I do think if you want to be a great program, you have to let supremely talented sophomores play if they're ready. Like, you can't. That's not Georgia lost everybody in the NFL draft. Go back and look. I think 7 of the top 10 Georgia defenders last year in snaps were first or second year players. You've got to let these guys play, or you're not going to be who you can be. So this is a conversation that we've had a lot in the course of Buckeye Talk. But right at the moment, it is primarily centered around Sonny Styles and CJ Hicks. And it just so happens that Sonny Styles has a clearer path than CJ Hicks does. But I don't think it's a shock that they were the first 2 picks in this draft, which brings us to pick number 3 and Nathan Baird.
So listen, I don't want to be boring, but I had the quarterbacks 1 and 2 on my list, and I think they could kind of go in any order, but I put Kyle McCord first because...
Okay, so can we declare this? Because, we're just doing the draft to talk about stuff. Let's just lump them together.
Okay.
Let's just do it.
Okay.
So this is the quarterback.
Yeah, I think that's the fair way to do it, yeah. I think that's probably the best way to do it, 1A, 1B. And listen, because here's the thing. If Kyle McCord is it and is showing it this spring and is like confidently taking command of that job, kind of the way we saw CJ Stroud do in the spring of 2021, right? Like he was already walking it and talking it a little bit, and then when we saw glimpses of it on the field, it kind of reinforced what we were already thinking. Then that builds a certain momentum here that I think is positive for the program. If Devin Brown does the same thing, though, like if Devin Brown shows up and he's it in a way that isn't just Kyle McCord faltering, I think that obviously starts to create a different kind of momentum and a different kind of energy. So whatever happens with this quarterback decision, again, as we've talked already ad nauseum, we're going to keep talking about it. I think there's reason, if you're an Ohio State fan, for confidence that this works out correctly either way. That it could be a win-win situation no matter who wins the job. But we haven't really seen that much of Kyle McCord. We've barely seen anything of Devin Brown. We'd like to see these guys really play some football, whatever little glimpse that is this spring.
And Stephen, I do think this got more interesting when Ryan Day really seemed to indicate, right, that this really matters. He didn't say, April's April, whatever. We'll figure it out in August. Like this is the quarterback battle potentially. We very much may get a pretty final decision on this. Maybe it's not exactly announced, but this is Ryan Day, Corey Dennis, this offensive staff, Brian Hartline. It's on right now, and they're trying to figure out who the quarterback's going to be.
Yeah, I don't know if I would have taken it this high, just because there's only one way that this goes where I feel like it creates real fireworks in the room. Because I don't think we're necessarily worried about the quarterback play the same way we're maybe when we're talking about other situations here where we're also interested in what it means for them on the field when it comes to the fall. But, yeah, I think what's going to happen here is some portion of the fan base will assume that Kyle McCord is ahead if he's still on this roster when fall camp starts. Because why would he still be here if he had fallen behind Devin Brown? So it's for me, I think the better way, the quarterbacks, that's a fine title for me. It's Kyle McCord still here when fall camp starts, which means he made it through the spring, and I feel like he's still ahead at that point.
But Nathan, Ryan Day did say, right, like they want to like figure this out here, right? Like I don't know that they're going to have a ceremony and announce it the way they did with Dwayne Haskins and Joe Burrow because guys were just in a different spot, but I think there would be perhaps more closure or more finality to the discussion around this quarterback battle than just did anyone transfer or not, right? I don't know. Like, I feel like we're really getting a decision here.
He's definitely open to it. That's the way he talked about it. And listen, like I started at this job on like August 16th, 2019 or something like that. And that was the day Justin Fields was given the starting quarterback job, which everyone knew he had from the time he transferred. Right. And CJ Stroud wasn't named the starter until August, I don't think, when everyone knew. So whatever, as far as like a ceremony, we'll probably know before then. But no, I mean, he's open to some finality, but that's kind of what I'm talking about. Like I think that is up to the players as much as it's up to Ryan Day to some extent. Like, does someone come in and seize the job? And more to the point, does Kyle McCord come in and say, hey, like Devin Brown is good, but this is my time. This is my job. This is what I've been building for you can read cleveland.com, but the last 2 years and beyond that. And he's just he's the one who knows the offense, who knows the system, who has the trust in locker room, all those things. And more to the point, but even if we don't get an answer this spring, I still want to see what this looks like. I want to see what it looks like when Kyle McCord is at and I know he's not going to have Ibuka and Fleming, so you're going to be missing two of your main receivers. But I want to see what glimpses we can get of what Kyle McCord looks like running this offense. What does Devin Brown look like running this offense? We've already talked about the potential stylistic differences between those two guys, the skill differences between those two guys. How much of that shows up when we get to watch any of those 11-on-11 little things? And in the spring game, obviously, we'll get to see more. But I just want to see what it looks like, because I think it's going to look different in some ways maybe than what C.J. Stroud looked like, certainly from what Justin Fields looked like.
So I think there's two ways where what we see this spring with these quarterbacks should be number one on this list, and that it should have been the number one pick. One is it's on. Oh my gosh, it's a coin flip. They both look great or they both look shaky. It is absolutely on. And snap to snap, whatever we see, it's like this is a barn burner of a competition. If it's that, there's nothing better than a quarterback competition in football. It's the best thing there is. So if it's that, it's number one. Or if one of them is clearly winning the job and in doing so looks like the Heisman winner, and it's like, oh my, is that Trevor Lawrence? What is that? Holy moly. That looks like, that is unbelievable. If it's that, and we think we are watching the next Mount Buckmore quarterback at Ohio State, it's like CJ was good and Justin was good, but oh my gosh. If it's that, it's number one. The reason I didn't take it number one is because it's super important, but I think it's going to be neither of those things. And my guess it's going to be, Kyle McCord looks good.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe.
Which is really vital, but also wouldn't be a shock and wouldn't be as much of a whoa or uncertainty like as the two guys we picked. So, but Steven, we also know you think you know what you're going to see. It's the most important thing happening in spring football, but I think there's a decent chance we get what we think, which is the older guy who's a 5-star recruit looks ready for the job and looks pretty darn good, and we'll see in August.
Yeah, I think we just, unfortunately, it feels like we know the script here to, poke at Twitter and the NFL right now, but I feel like we know the script, and I don't know how much of the, whoa, what is that? That looks like the Heisman Trophy winner. We're just going to be able to see because we're so limited in how much practice we can see. And neither one of these quarterbacks, even if Devin Brown is a little bit more mobile, he's not Justin Fields mobile. I remember the 2019 spring game where there was one play where they didn't call it dead and Justin Fields got loose and he was on the run. And it was like, oh, I didn't have that last year. That was a little different. I don't think we're going to get that moment. And so because I don't think we're going to get that moment, it's just going to they're going to look really good in the spring. And then we're going to get to fall camp and they're going to look pretty good there too. And then they're probably going to be a Heisman Trophy finalist because that's just how the Ohio State quarterbacks have been lately. But I am not banking on the, oh my Lord, look at this. This is ridiculous moment because we just haven't, they've had the three straight quarterbacks be Heisman Trophy finalists, and only one of those guys really gave you that moment in the spring, and that was Justin Fields.
Had to be drafted high. It's a quarterback battle at Ohio State. I mean, this is kind of the thing. This is as good as it gets. So we're super intrigued to see it. Again, if you guys haven't done it, I would direct you, to the big story that Nathan wrote about Kyle McCord, talking to his family, talking to people around him who helped him develop into this type of quarterback. And then I would direct you back to the podcast we did as a companion piece to that last week about Kyle McCord, where we talked about Nathan's reporting. We talked about Steven talking to Kyle along the way as a recruit and all those things. So if you want more sort of in-depth analysis of this quarterback battle, we've got it for you in written form and in podcast form. We just dropped it last week. And of course, we know you guys are reading cleveland.com/OSU to check in on all this stuff. Okay, the first